Well, Donald Trump is trying to quell a growing backlash to the second fatal shooting in Minneapolis by ICE agents. The White House has now announced a US border czar, Tom Homan, will be taking over immigration enforcement operations in Minnesota. This is after a conversation with Tim Walz, the governor there. Mark Stone explains.
Tom Homan was designated the immigration czar, the border czar, by Donald Trump at the beginning of his administration about a year ago. And he has done a lot in order to sort out the immigration, the illegal immigration, the crossing of so many people over the southern border. He, though, over the course of the past few months has been somewhat sidelined. There's a bit of a power struggle going on in the White House, and Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Secretary, has taken the lead role in terms of what's been going on here in Minneapolis and in some other Democratic parts of the country as well. Her sort of way of dealing with things has been very overt power, pressure, and kind of theatre, some might say, when it comes to the way that ICE agents have been dealing with things in places like Minnesota. Tom Homan, he is a hardliner when it comes to immigration, but less of an ideologue. He has been in immigration for a very long time, his whole career. He works in the Obama administration. And while his views on sorting out, cracking down on immigration are in line with Trump, of course they are, Tom Homan is more of a sort of practical operator. And so I think the fact that he is being inserted into this operation suggests that Donald Trump is not happy with the way things have been going.
Yeah, he's not happy with the backlash, absolutely. Even some of the MAGA base criticising him. There was, I think, a slight change in tone that reflects that rethink, I think, from Donald Trump, from Carolyn Levitt today at the White House.
President Trump does not want any Americans to lose their lives in the streets of America and in American communities across the country. He believes what happened on Saturday is a tragedy, but every life is equal to President Trump.
She did go on to criticise the targeting of ICE agents and somewhat blame that on what we have seen with the escalating violence. 2 innocent protesters dead. Joining me live is former White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney. Mick, there certainly seems to be growing backlash from where I sit. Is that countrywide, though, or just limited to Minnesota?
Whether or not it's countrywide is always difficult to say, but it is broad-based. Laura, there is no question about it. The administration has been getting pounded on its handling of the Minneapolis situation, going back to the killing of Renee Good about 10 days ago. So this is a dramatic change. I thought your correspondent did a nice job of sort of laying out the history of it and the power struggles. Probably an overstatement, but there's still a lot of tension between Tom Homan as the border czar, which is not a formal position in our government, and Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, which is a formal position. So what I think your correspondent missed was the specific indication from Donald Trump that Tom Homan would answer directly to the White House and bypass the Department of Homeland Security. That tells me that Donald Trump is not happy with the way things are running. I think Kristi Noem has done a pretty good job in the last 48 hours of changing her tone. But keep in mind, she did come out and call Renee Good a domestic terrorist in the minutes after her killing, and then made sort of equally aggressive statements about Mr. Pretty, who was assassinated in the video that you're seeing here now. So he's not happy. And I think there's a reason for that, because it's not being well received at all by the population.
Yeah, really interesting that you say that, because Kristi Noem and the description and the doubling down after these 2 shootings now, in the subsequent hours and days, more footage inevitably comes out. And what she has described, I think any reasonable person would really question.
That's exactly right. I mean, and you and I talked about this on the Good shooting 10 days ago, which is the legalities are one thing. Was the officer legally justified in discharging the weapon? Maybe we'll get an investigation, I hope, and we'll know the answer to that question. But most people don't care about that. They care about what it looks like. And it's not just the optics. It's, does it look right? Does it look fair? Does it violate some common sense? And the answer is yes. It does. When a law enforcement officer in this country shoots an unarmed civilian on his knees in the back several times, people want to sort of raise their hand and say, okay, no, that's enough. We're stopping now. You had me up until that particular point, but now it's different. So I think that the Trump administration recognizes that. Again, I thought Kristi's tone the last 40 hours was pretty good. But in this day and age, Laura, as you and I both well known, as soon as you say one thing, it's on the internet forever. So they've been struggling with some of the messaging they put out in the minutes after the shooting. And it looks like Tom Homan is going to be called in to try and fix the situation without Kristi Noem's direct involvement.
Yeah, those still hanging on to the fact that this man, Alex Pretty, was armed, surely are tying themselves in knots, because you hold so dearly your Second Amendment right to carry weapons in the United States. He was doing that, but the footage now clearly shows that he was disarmed by these ICE agents moments before, but he was still shot several times.
It is, and there are members of the administration who came out, again, shortly after the shooting in a rush to sort of defend the administration said, well, he shouldn't have had a gun anyway. Only criminals carry guns. Oh, my goodness gracious. What a poke in the eye to the Republicans who've defended the Second Amendment in this country so vehemently.
Who said that? Because, I mean, it is just so offensively hypocritical and damaging to their own arguments.
It was an assistant U.S. attorney from the administration. So this was a law enforcement officer. Can't remember the district he's from. And there was other statements by, I think Kash Patel said something about you're not allowed to have these guns at protests and so forth. There's all, again, this is not what Republicans have been saying for the last 50, 60, 70 years. So the management of this, again, in those minutes after the actual shooting, after it becomes public, has been poor. The administration, to their credit, is figuring that out and trying to get a handle on it by putting Tom Homan in charge.
Mick, you're a patriot. I know you're someone that is dedicated to your country. Just looking at your CV, that is proof. When you see these incidents, when you see these ICE agents, and there's no question that some of these ICE agents have detained and deported some of the worst criminals, and we're talking about child offenders or worse. But what do you think when you see these ICE agents on the streets checking papers? What is the point? What is trying to be achieved here? If we could give, this administration and Trump the benefit of the doubt here, what's the point of it?
Yeah. I think it's wrong. I do. I think it's wrong that the law enforcement is wearing masks. Good guys don't wear masks in my country. I've said that for several months. I think it's wrong when... Look, put it this way. Renee Good probably broke the law, and she should have been punished for that. She should have been punished for that proportionately. The penalty for maybe hitting the guy with the car shouldn't be death. Was this Pretty guy? Was he breaking the law? Maybe. Was he interfering with law enforcement? Probably. Is that against the law? Yes. Should he be penalized? Yes. Should the penalty for that be death? There's no way that should be reasonable in anybody's eyes right now. And I think the administration is starting to get it. If I'm in the White House the last 48 hours, I'm telling the president, Mr. President, look, we may be legally right, but this looks horrible. People don't like it, and we need to fix this for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, it's the right thing to do. But secondly, you're going to get creamed in the midterms if you can't figure out a way to change the narrative here, because right now the Republican Party is chasing away the centrist swing voters by the score with the way we're enforcing immigration policy.
Okay, midterms is in November, still a couple of months away, to say the very least. But what kind of states will this affect the Republican vote in?
Arizona would be a big state. Look, Minnesota, in the midterm elections, it's not state by state. It is with the Senate, right? But this is not a presidential election. So you're looking at individual House races. So even in a deep red state or a deep blue state like Minnesota, there still could be a seat or two in the United States House that could be up for grabs and that could be negatively impacted by this. And that could go for any single state. Look, I was in Congress for 6 years. I ran 4 times. And I got to tell you, if the head of my party is doing what the administration is doing, it makes it really, really difficult for me to talk to swing voters. I talk to the base all day long. I can talk to the MAGA people. Donald Trump really can do no wrong for those folks, but those are not enough people.
Where are the MAGA people at, Mick? Because, Joe Rogan can't be ignored. He has millions and millions of listeners and viewers every single week. He's uncomfortable with this. Tucker Carlson said the same thing. Those two people we can't exactly ignore, can we? Because they represent a big cohort of what people are feeling.
And you cannot, certainly if you're a Republican, you cannot ignore the National Rifle Association, the largest gun owners group in the country, who came out against that statement I mentioned to you by that U.S. attorney very, very aggressively. Again, this is another one of those examples, I've talked about in the past, that are so interesting, Laura, because it's the first time, or one of the few times, when the Republican Party writ large is looking like it's willing to push back against Donald Trump. The Epstein files were one. This is looking like another.
No, just speaking of the Epstein files, they haven't even been released yet, have they?
No, I think you and I might be old and retired by the time those things come out. Of course, you're going to retire a lot later than I am, but I think that sort of puts it in perspective.
I'm never going to retire. We'll see you soon, Mick. Great to talk to you, as always. You mentioned the midterms. They are fast approaching, and that is one to watch. That's why we talk about this, not just because it's a domestic US issue, because it is something shocking in a democracy, I think. It's something that people are certainly concerned about. But if you want to look at the political framing, this will affect the midterms. And what does Trump care about? Domestic politics, absolutely.